the Reformation. The Church at the beginning of the 16th century. The medieval Church had a strong influence on people's thinking. Many people had a simple belief in God. They believed that if they obeyed the Church's teachings, they would go to heaven. If not, they would go to hell. But during the Renaissance, things began to change. The Church began to be more openly criticized for its abuses. The leaders of the clergy were wealthy, and they often gave important positions to their relatives, which was against the official teachings of the Church. Many priests and monks seemed more interested in their own pleasure than in saving souls. The Church also raised money through the sale of indulgences. People who bought indulgences were told that this would buy them a pardon for their sins and rescue them from purgatory. According to the Church's teachings, this was a place where the souls of the dead went to be punished for sins before going to heaven. Martin Luther. Martin Luther was born in Germany, and in his early 20s he became a monk. Later he started his academic career at the University of Wittenberg as a teacher of theology. In 1517 he compiled a list of complaints against the Church, which were later known as the 95 Theses, and nailed it to the door of the church in Wittenberg. Luther claimed that God would pardon all those who had faith in Jesus Christ. He called this revelation salvation by faith alone. He also stood up against the indulgences and denied the authority of the Pope. The Pope, Leo X, condemned Luther for heresy. His friends hid him in Wartburg Castle, where Luther translated the Bible into German. Luther's ideas spread quickly, and people who supported him became known as Protestants, because they protested against the Catholic doctrine. Luther established schools and began to organize a new church, later called Lutheran after him. John Calvin. John Calvin was a French scholar of law and religion. He was forced to leave France because of his religious beliefs, and later settled in Geneva, Switzerland. Calvin's ideas were partly based on Luther's, but followers of the two men could not agree on all aspects. Calvin claimed that only God could decide who would be saved, and only those whom God chose would go to heaven. This idea is called predestination. He believed that the church should be organized and disciplined. He summarized his suggestions for church rules in his book, Institutes of Christian Religion. He also preached the right of resistance against unfair or bad rulers. Calvin's strict ideas were put into practice in Geneva. All life in the city was controlled by a group of church officials and townspeople. Schools and hospitals were provided, and the poor were looked after. But moral and religious misbehavior were severely punished, and there was little place for pleasure or enjoyment.